for Russia?
Well, for Russia itself, there's a whole combination of different reasons and implications for having the Sochi Olympics. First of all is the past. Russia always has a strong sporting tradition. They last had the Olympics in 1980. They're the world's biggest country, the 9th biggest population. This is a gap between what was past and the successes of the past and taking into the future, and also into leaving a legacy. And the best way to do that is in terms of sport. There have been so many Olympic stars over the years, Russians that have lit up the Olympics, for instance, Olga Korbut. This is a great way of showing the new Russia in terms of what we were good at and also how they can take it forward. And also, in having the Olympics in Sochi, they're boosting a new region. For once, the Olympics aren't going to be based in Moscow. There's nothing happening in the northwest in St. Petersburg or Moscow. This is going to be in Krasnodar, the 3rd biggest region. They already have 2 football clubs there. This builds up a whole new region to go forward. It's not just going to be about the Olympics. It's going to be about Formula 1. It's going to be a host for the World Cup. So that's all about going forward.
The whole event itself, a 2-week event, yeah? So if you look at it on that scale, there are some critics that say, hey, was this money best spent? I mean, millions have been poured into it. I mean, what's the future for Sochi after that? I know it's early to talk about it, but what are the plans?
Well, the interesting thing about big sporting events, for instance, World Cup, Olympics, all those big global events, they rarely actually make money for the host cities. Economists have been arguing about it for years, but now it's conclusive. They don't really make money. But what is invaluable is the feel-good factor. As Andrew was talking about before, you've had the country come together. Absolutely. London is a perfect example of that. It brings a nation together. And if you look at the relay itself, I mean, the estimates are that 90% of the Russian population, over 130 million people across this vast expanse, will be within an hour of the relay. Bringing together these people in a bid that's been going on since 2005 has now come from fruition from 2007. The feel-good factor is enormous, as well as also boosting the infrastructure, opening Russia out to the world. Our channel is good at showing the world a little idea of what Russia is like. Now other people will be able to come in and see it. And also with a global audience, it won't just be people within Russia or within Europe, it'll be a global audience to see what's going on.
Feel-good factor, do you agree? That's why it's good for Russia? Does it bring anything else?
It will definitely be a feel-good factor, and I think will also boost sport in the future for Russia, because a lot of those facilities, those training facilities, were in dire need of being there in the first place, just to allow the biathletes to train, the ski jumpers, for example. So I think it puts Russia in good stead in terms of the Winter Olympics and winter events in the future.
I mean, what's the quality of the buildings and the facilities that have been built here? Have you seen them firsthand, guys? I mean,
first rate, and all the reviews from the athletes, who I think are the most important people, give them 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10. I mean, as I said before, there were test events taking place over the last few months, and you've been following the test events too, and the feedback has always been very positive, hasn't it?
Absolutely, and also there's a question of sort of learning by other people's mistakes, as it were. Vancouver was the brown Olympics, they'd said, because of the lack of snow. So the Russians have been storing snow. It's like 500,000 cubic metres of snow has been stored up at Rosacuta.
Just in case, because I think it has actually physically snowed.
It has actually snowed. Absolutely, it's physically snowed.
So contingency plans as well, yeah.
Contingency plans, yes.
It's not been without its controversy either, of course, so far. A lot of controversy about the gay side of it and the Russian law, etc. Is that going to affect the Games? Generally,
sporting events tend to outweigh any issues. I mean, when you look back over...
I mean, protests are expected there because of it. We don't know how big those protests will be, but they are expected. Is it going to have much of an effect, do you think?
Well, if you look back over many sporting events over the years, can you remember many protests? You tend to remember more the athletes, you tend to remember the volunteers, you tend to remember the achievements, the world records. These tend to go down in history rather than the political issues or the social issues at the time. Yes, some will be remembered, but really this is all about a celebration of sport. Today is the celebration of sport and the future of Sochi and Russia and going forward. Those issues will come to the fore, but today is all about a positive, feel-good Russia day.
All right. Guys, I gather now, thank you for your input so far. Do stay with me for a bit more if you can, because we're heading towards seeing that flame in a minute, and then Mr. Putin will be speaking. But I gather